But I can remember the first CBS event I went to. It was actually here in Atlanta. And I was sitting kind of up close. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. And we were singing a song, and it was like, why are there men voices in here? And I was turning around because at that time I thought it was just a women's ministry. And I was turning around, I'm like, why are there men's voices? That just sounded so cool. So let me cue up my slides. Hang on. All right, we're good. So before we get in today, I just want to share with you guys something very personal. I try to be transparent, but Lord, there's some things you don't want me to be transparent about. But, we talked last week, and only God can do something like this. We talked about the process that Abraham had gone through, and he was actually called to lay Isaac on the altar. And that the calling was not a bad calling. It was really just a testing to say, I'm not calling you out on anything. I'm not telling you you're doing something wrong. I want to see how much you love me. God wanted to know that. The Thursday night prior to our class, I had had a board meeting. It had not gone well. And I'd kind of tucked it away Friday morning in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. We had not had heat in our house all week, and it was cold. But the gentleman was coming Friday afternoon, and it was just still tucked back in there. And he was great, got us heat. And about 6:30, I sat down with the Hallmark Channel. Yep, so you know what's going to happen, right? I'm crying. God, tell me what you want me to do, And he clearly, as clear as ever, he said, when are you going to put your Isaac on my altar? I was, and I still got that. He said, you need to obey me. I got this. I will take care of it. You need to obey me. And I share that because one of the things that I felt like is that not sharing it with you was not being transparent with you. It was not being one with you. And for me to get up here and talk from slides and not experience it real and not share that with you is wrong. So he wants us to put things on the altar and to turn them over to him. And he's got it. And he just wants our obedience. So I just wanted to share that with you. A couple of quick announcements. Most of you through email may have gotten something like this week. So just want to remind you, if you haven't, maybe looking for it. But basically, this is just a forward-looking sort of calendar of events for you so that you can just keep it and you'll know what's going on in the class for weeks to come. We do still have, if you're interested, as I said last week, CBS does not allow the process of gift giving. So if you would like to make a donation in the honor of like your core leader or maybe your children's teacher, just somebody, these cards are in the back of the room. And the process is that the individual that you are making the gift in the honor of will be notified of that. And then you can fill out paperwork, and it is tax deductible as well. So that's in the back of the room. If you have not picked up your second volume of our lessons, it actually starts this week. So these tables are in the back of the room as well. These books are on a table in the back of the room. We may just do announcements this morning. There's also an opportunity, if you would like, to pick up just a little card. It just helps. We serve snacks in the children's area. And because of food allergies this year, we're really narrowed it down to about 3 different snacks that we can provide. And if you would like to just pick up a bag of Ruffles or chips while you're in the grocery store anyway, we would love for that donation as well. So these little cards are in the back of the room. Last one. This is the kids' little craft, and this is preschool area to make that clear. So it'll be their little handprints, and it's the Father has sent his Son to be my Savior. So All right, so we do have an abbreviated teaching this morning just so that we can accommodate for our children's program and be ready to go. But we want to thank our love ladies who are serving today, Megan King, Brandy Longoria, Mary Jane Markheim, and Heather Turner. And then the children's lesson is that God promised Mary she would be the mother of Jesus. I love this picture. So this is Mr. and Mrs. Herbert Fisher. They, yes, that's right, Zelmira and Herbert, and they broke the Guinness World Record for the longest marriage in 2008. They were married in 1924, I created extra years. That's a really long time. But they were married 84 years. Can you imagine? I know, if you're like me, you're going, ooh. Oh, we would have had to have a lot of separation. And then in 2011, Herbert passed away at the sweet age of 105. And 2 years later, she passed away also at the age of 105. So on Valentine's Day in 2010, I love this part, they answered questions about the longevity of their marriage through Twitter. I didn't even know how to tweet then. And she said, there isn't any secret. But this is kind of real. You can look at it two different ways, but it was only God that kept us together, right? And so what we see today, obviously, is that we see Abraham just mourning over the loss of his sweet wife, Sarah. And we can all look back over his life and think, yeah, but do you remember when you went to Egypt? But we could probably all do that with our own lives as well. So we're just going to celebrate and be with him as he's going through this mourning today. So the question is, will you choose today to focus on the source of the light? You're like, what? Okay. So we're going to bridge. It has been 17 years since our lesson of last week. It doesn't feel that long to us, but it was to them when Abraham was asked to sacrifice Isaac. And we are now standing with Abraham at probably what had to be one of the lowest times of his life, a very difficult season. But what we will see throughout this chapter is how God's light shines even through this dark period and this dark season that he's in. Not just for him, but for us as well. So they were just doing life together. They were married at the typical, if they were married at the typical age of that time, culturally customary, it would have been around the age of 15. Sarah lived to be 127. So that means they were married 112 years. Yeah, let that sit, let that marinate for a little bit. And it's estimated that at this time, when his mother was, when he lost his mother, that Isaac was around the age of 37. And once again, the friend of God was living under the great trees of Mamre in Canaan. And if you remember this particular site, this is where he was when the angels came to meet him and talk to him about the destruction that would take place at Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the same location where he was when the angels came back the second time and said, in a year you're going to have a son. So this is a very spiritually significant location to Abraham in his life. I love maps. There's the journey. It says their journey of faith, they were called to leave Ur for a destination not yet revealed. It began when he was 75 and Sarah was 65. And from that time on, they learned to depend entirely upon God for his protection and his provision. And we know they lived in tents like nomads. Even for the time period that he was in the same location, he chose to live in a tent rather than building for himself and his family a permanent housing. But at this particular time, he was in mourning. And in accordance with customs of the Middle East at that time, Sarah's body would have been placed in a tent by herself. And those who wanted to pay their respects would go into the tent to visit with her and to do that. And so we see that Abraham is going into the tent alone by himself, and he's mourning her loss, or the loss of her. And I can't help but think, if he's thinking over just the little parts of their lives that we know about, how many times had he comforted her when she was hoping to become pregnant and was not yet pregnant for a long time, that he would comfort her and just hold her as she cried. But he also remembers her beauty, and he remembers the grace of giving her the opportunity to know what it felt like to nurse a child at an older age when she had given up. You see, Abraham had been grieving the loss at this point, and he's literally walking through the valley of the shadow of death. We also spend times in the shadows. It can be sadness, it can be heartbreak, illness, maybe somebody's hurt us, maybe we've lost a loved one. But it feels like just a dark place. But we have to remember that a shadow cannot exist without a light, right? So if I wanted to do an illustration of this, but if you have a flashlight and you shine it on someone, for a shadow to be created, a source of light has to be there. So the challenge for us is, whenever we get into those shadow, dark places of our life, to remember there is a source of light. We may not be able to see it. We may not be able to feel the warmth of it at that time, but it is present and it is there. And it's imperative that we cling to that, and we know that God is our source of light. You see, God calls us to face the light, just as Abraham did. He didn't exist in the shadows and in the darkness. He turned and used his faith to continue to face towards God. And even though those shadows can darken parts of our lives, there still has to be a source of light and God in every situation. You see, he has a plan for us, and his plans are always good, even when they don't feel good. Even when you don't know how you could see the end, you don't know where that light is. We are called to have faith like Abraham, that they are there. Today, the area around the cave it is a Islam temple. And it is called the Patriarchs. I'm going to go to the bottom of it. Yep, Tomb of the Patriarchs. And so we know, and you know by doing your study, that not only Abraham and Sarah were buried there, but for generations to come. The patriarchs, as we'll study in the upcoming weeks after the first of the year, they too were buried in that same place. But we know that Abraham didn't have land to bury his wife. And what was customary in that time was that he wanted to purchase a cave. That was a typical burying point. But that cave was also part of a larger parcel of land. And if the owner had just sold him the cave, the owner would still be responsible for paying all the taxes on the whole property. So it was better for the owner to just sell him the land and the cave, which escalated the price, and it was not necessarily what Abraham wanted to buy, but Abraham was, I want the cave, so I'll take the land too, and I'll pay your price. At the end of Abraham's life, he really owned nothing but that burial cave. He never owned any of the land that he raised his children and his family and his servants and his flocks and he never owned any of that. He was promised it, but he didn't have ownership of it. So this burial plot was the only thing he really owned upon his death. The lesson then goes in and it begins to talk to us about the sort of the second phase of Abraham's life following the loss of Sarah. He lived another 30 years. He remarried. He married a concubine, and her status never changes. She remains a concubine, not the wife of Abraham, because the blessings and to be an heir had to fall through the line of Isaac. Does that make sense? And so neither Abraham, I'm sure, nor God wanted that to be disrupted. And you may have talked a little bit about it in your class too, but I think we decided this morning in leaders group that our favorite son's name was Buzz. It's like, you just expect this, Red Ryder or something. What was that? Like a pebble shooting gun? And never mind, I'm way off. All right, so you see, God intends for us to walk this journey and sharing it with others, not alone. Part of what I have to put on the altar and let go and let God have is, from a work perspective, the buck kind of stops here. So I feel like I have to do it all. And I can't. And I have to let that go. We all have things we have to let go. He also intends for us to make next generations of faith, whether it's through our own children. It could be through serving as love ladies here. You're impacting the next generation of Christians. It could be any opportunity that you have to pour into a younger child or a younger person and just say, do you know how much God loves you? It could be a mentoring program that you're a part of, where maybe you're pouring in to a young woman that's walking a path you walked, in my case, maybe 20 years ago. But they're walking the path with young children and trying to balance and juggle everything that they have to juggle. And maybe it's just, I'll be another set of hands for you. But whatever we feel tugged on and called to do, it's our responsibility to pour into that next generation. You see, the shadows can feel like they're overtaking us, but they really never do. God and His light is there. We need to focus on Him and that source of light. And then we, in turn, need to be that source of light for others. So will you choose today to focus on the source of the light? We're running a little ahead schedule. I shortened it because I thought I didn't want the kids waiting. So, does anybody have a song or dance they'd like to share with? Can I volunteer somebody if you don't? We can do this. If you are not sick right now, would you please stand up? Because everybody's got something going on. But if you will, let's go ahead and stand and sing our closing song. The kids should be here in about 3 minutes.